now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Welcome into RBLR Sports, specifically part one of a two-part Rays week that we're going to have here. My name is Eureka Wheeler, and I'm stepping in for a little bit of a hosting duty because with the Hurricane Ian and everything, it kind of messed up our schedules. But we have two big things to talk about today, and to do that, we're bringing in the man himself who created his own damn stat. That is our very own Ben Whitelaw. Mr. Whitelaw, how are you doing?
Hey, good morning. Hope you had fun during that hurricane scare the other day.
Yeah, it was a good time to move over the weekend, and then the storm
Right.
came, and I moved right into a flood zone, so I had to pull up the camping equipment and figure it out as soon as the path was coming our way. But we figured it out. How did you guys survive the storm?
We got a little bit of wind and a little bit of rain up in New Tampa, and that was about it. So we kept power like the whole time. So thankfully, it was very uneventful.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it was very devastating to our friends down south. So, of course, good vibes, and if there's anything that you listening can do, make sure there are a number of ways that there are relief efforts. So please, if you can, search them out and do what you can for our friends down in Naples, Fort Myers, and the like. So, but. Let's be a distraction for the people, Ben. This week of Rays baseball, the first thing I want to bring up is, hey, we clinched the playoffs for the fourth straight consecutive year. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more of a challenge this season, I think, than in years past. But with all the injuries, things like that, they got it done. So at the end of the day, that's what really matters is they're comfortably in a playoff spot. They've clinched it. They can kind of pivot for a better seed here towards the end, but ultimately it doesn't matter that much in my opinion. Like it's such a small sample size that like nothing is fundamentally going to change depending on your seed. I mean, obviously you want home games, but they'll do what they can.
Now, both you and Zach were very optimistic at the beginning of the year that this was a 100-win baseball team. We've documented the ups and downs and some of the trials and tribulations that Cash and the crew have gone through. But is it just now that we finally have clinched, do you kind of sit back and just say, hey, we'll take it any way we can get it? Or were there some things along the way that you're kind of you thought it was going to be a 100-win season, but now that obviously that's not going to be true? I don't know if we're backing into the playoffs, but we don't seem to be on 100% cylinders going in here.
Yeah, there are definitely some things offensively that they're going to want to, polish before the playoffs, but it's really just kind of the ebbs and flows of a season. Obviously 100 wins would have been great. And I think if this team was like moderately healthy, or if they had like the same amount of injuries as like the next closest or the next most injured team, they probably would have been 100 wins pretty easily, but they didn't have that amount of injuries. So they just have to kind of like, you got to ride it out. Thankfully, they have the depth to cover. But like going into the season, if you told me that Brandon Lau would miss like 75% of the year, Wander Franco would miss like half the year, Yandy would be, benched a little bit near the end with the shoulder. If you told me they'd lose Kittredge, Fireisen, we had Mcclanahan go on the IL for a little bit of an injury scare. Like if you told me all these things were going to happen, that would have probably made me feel like they weren't going to make the playoffs just because like of the sheer amount of talent that they've lost, but they were able to overcome it. They're getting a little bit stronger now with Glasnow returning. Yandy is looking healthy again. Choi is starting to hit the ball harder again. So it's definitely getting better overall, but there are some things that hopefully they can get some positive regression with heading into that postseason.
Yeah, well, I will get into my kind of news and notes and thoughts with Zach tomorrow for part two. So today, what I wanted to do is just talk mainly with Ben about the stat that he's gone into Excel. He's deep dived in the Excel spreadsheet and come out with a new stat. We're calling it wEZR, wEZR. But I'm gonna refer to it as wEZR the rest of the day. So I'm not talking about a band. I am very much talking about this pretty cool stat that Ben has cooked up. So I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, if you're hearing about this for the first time, you might have a lot of questions too. Let's see. The first thing, Ben, is why the hell did you come up with a stat?
I was kind of bored, honestly. Like I've got a little bit of free time lately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it would be cool to try to create something that can, evaluate a pitcher based on things that they have kind of somewhat control over. Like most of these things
Hmm.
that go into the formula are things that they control to an extent, like more so than other stats and numbers. So like zone
Yeah.
contact rate is one of them, walk rate is another. So like zone contact rate is like getting swing and miss in the zone. Walk rate is about like, are you walking guys or are you not? And then barrel rate is kind of about like limiting quality of contact. And I chose barrel rate over like exit velocity or other, quality of contact metrics because sometimes pitchers do thrive off of like allowing contact and like getting deep into games. Like Rasmussen has done better this
Right.
year, but like last year, he was just like, yep, put the ball in play, let the seam shifted wig take care of it. I don't care how hard they hit it. The defense is going to, make the play. And that's great for some pitchers, but for others, it's not. So barrel rate was, the happy medium there. So taking in account of all three of these things, I weighted them based on like the league averages and then crunched a couple numbers to make it into like one concise thing. I think I like multiplied by 100 to get like a nice round number instead of some weird decimal. But basically,
Yeah.
each pitcher has their own wEZR rating,
Okay.
and it measures, like I said, how effective they are at things they can control working within the strike zone.
So I see, and there is a link to the Google Doc in the description, so you can follow along with us here. But looking at your intro, you do talk about if someone has a wEZR of what is it, one? It's like -1 to 1 is pretty much average. So
Yeah.
using that metric, if you're negative, we'll go. It goes to 9. So if you're -9, you are the worst zone pitcher in the history of baseball. And if you have a wEZR above 9, you are very, 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 very good in the zone. So, yeah, take me through that. Like who is a pitcher that is elite because of this metric?
So I have separated it into like that we have relief pitchers and then we have starting pitchers and bulk guys because
Okay.
starting pitchers and bulk guys tend to have different zone contact rates, which really affects it because that's probably like actually is the heaviest weighted thing in the formula. So when you're looking at relief pitchers, they're usually going to get more swing and miss in the zone, where starting pitchers and bulk guys don't usually do it as much, even though they can, it's possible. But a really good relief pitcher based on wEZR would be Pete
Hmm.
Fairbanks. That's a We can see it with the eye test as well. Like he gets a ton of swing and miss in the zone. He's only walked the last time I had this spreadsheet updated 3.8% of batters, and I believe that's dropped lately. And he has a barrel rate of under 3%. So his wEZR is 9.58. It is the highest among all relievers and starters for that matter too. He's just incredible and on another level this year. And then Edwin Diaz is close behind him. And, if you watch Edwin Diaz pitch for the Mets, you'll notice like, oh, that makes sense because he's really, really good. So there's a strong correlation between wEZR and a pitcher's ERA and their FIP. So it is measuring like pitchers that are good have high wEZR ratings and pitchers that are bad have low wEZR ratings. But what's been most interesting to me is finding the pitchers with like an ERA in the fours and fives, but they have a really high wEZR rating. So like they might be underperforming, or guys that are overperforming and have like a low ERA but a low wEZR rating too. So it's really interesting kind of digging into the different players and how they're successful.
Well, and speaking of like FIP and ERA and things like that, you're what you're doing, I think, here is you're separating to tell a story to say sometimes because ERA can be luck. It's not things aren't baked into ERA that really explain why it is high or low. And that's what I like about this stat is that you're combining a bunch of things that a pitcher can at least are trying to control, and unless they're just running into Aaron Judge, who has like a astronomical barrel rate.
Right.
They should be all right. So what was the bias like what are some inherent biases that you see as you're tweaking this, because I know when you first ran it, it was you've had to separate starters and relievers since your first time. So what are some of the things that you initially saw when you created this that were surprising, and what have you done to kind of filter out some of that?
Yeah, so definitely the relief pitcher versus starter and bulk guy kind of bias is there. Like relief pitchers tend to have really high scores because they get so much more swing and miss. So part of that was about adjusting the weighting a little bit to make walk rate a little bit more valuable in the formula because relief pitchers tend to walk more guys. If a lot of relief pitchers had better command, then they probably would be starters or bulk pitchers. So trying to level the playing field in that way without like compromising the overall like way that the formula rates a player. So that was a little tricky, but I think I found a sweet spot. And then also I did it with minor league players, and that took a little bit of extra work because Florida Complex League, Arizona Complex League, Dominican Summer League, like they tend to have like a couple really high outliers in
Hmm.
different metrics. So limiting the effects of them and then also creating like a separate leaderboard for those guys. It was just a lot of organization stuff, but
Yeah.
it's still a pretty solid metric. It doesn't tell the entire story of a pitcher, but it seems like it's a pretty important piece of the puzzle. Um, because you can see the teams that are analytically driven and like value having like a good bullpen and good pitching staff with high end arms, like they tend to have more pitchers that have high wEZR ratings. Like Houston has a ton of them, the
Okay.
Dodgers have a ton, the Rays have a ton, Seattle
Okay.
has like three of the top 15. So yeah, it's there's something
Hmm.
there for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or because the next thing was what's the storyline that you're extrapolating from the raw data? Like, we'll get into the Rays specifically and what you see in the stable right now, but yeah, you bring up Seattle, who just clinched the playoffs for the first time in 21 years. You see the Dodgers, who are the World Series champions. You see, people that are excelling, and the Rays, who are, I believe, considering how low our payroll is and how effective our pitching has been, almost regardless of the name on the back of the jersey, um, trying to figure out why that works. I think this is a good tool for that. So, yeah, what are some of the stories that you've seen outside of those kind of guys at the top that you saw?
There were a couple interesting ones. I know I just we just started talking about it here, but Seattle has like Eric Swanson, Andres
Hmm.
Munoz, and the third one here, Paul Sewald. Like they're all phenomenal, all ranking within the 95th percentile in wEZR.
Yeah.
And we can see that on the field. Like they have one of the most dominant bullpens in the game. Just in the top 15 to 20 here, we've got like four Dodger pitchers on the relief pitcher side, like three Astros, three Rays. Just it's we can really see like which teams are valuing like a certain type of pitcher, and it's the type of pitcher that is able to be effective within the zone. Because I mean it's easier said than done, but like any pitcher can get like swing and miss outside of the zone. Like it's a lot harder to hit a ball that's like 3 feet away from you as opposed to like a foot and a half. But the pitchers that are really special and really talented and have great stuff are able to get swing and miss in the zone. And the teams that are prioritizing that tend to have stronger pitching staffs overall.
Ben, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Rays particularly. So if considering that they're one of the teams that are very high in this stat that you've brought in, who's kind of among the top and bottom of wEZR on the Rays?
So at the top, it's no surprise Shane Mcclanahan. He is in the 100th percentile among starting pitchers and bulk guys. Him
Hmm.
and Jacob DeGrom are one and two, very close. He gets a lot of swing and miss in the zone. That's part of it. He's got an excellent walk rate under 7%, which is great. Barrel rate under 7% as well. Zone contact rate under 80%. Like he does everything so well, and he does it efficiently and effectively. So it makes sense to see him up there. It was a little surprising, but also not really, to see Jeffrey Springs as the second highest wEZR pitcher on the Rays.
Hmm.
So him and Mcclanahan are really close, and then there's a little bit of a drop off after that. But it makes sense with Springs. Like we see him use that changeup and now the sinker to get a ton of swing and miss in the zone. His walk rates have basically been cut in half this season. So it really makes sense looking back on it now to see that the Rays were like, oh, he could definitely be a starting pitcher, and he's had a lot of success doing it. So towards the bottom, though, it's kind of a small sample thing. We have Patino in the sixth percentile with a negative 2.38 wEZR. So he's been not great, but he's really just been like, a little bit below average. And then Josh Fleming is also down there near the bottom with a negative 1.43. Both of those guys have pitched less than, well, Fleming has pitched 30.1 innings and Patino has pitched 20 innings at the major league level. So it's like really small. Those guys would probably regress if they pitched more in the majors this season. They also have pretty decent numbers in the minor leagues too. So there is room to improve. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see Jeffrey Springs mostly at the top because Mcclanahan's not really a surprise.
Yeah, it was not guys like Mcclanahan, Boz. We would think they've done really well in their. Well, Boz only had less than 30 innings, but he's done really well, and we're all very excited about his future. Mcclanahan obviously is a Cy Young candidate, or at least was for the majority of the season. But a guy like Drew Rasmussen, who he is 68th percentile, but he's really right dead in the middle of your average pitching, where I would think that Raz has had maybe better success. So how do you feel that the story is being told on Rasmussen using wEZR?
I mean, I think it's a little bit skewed. I would have to find a way to filter based on like beginning of the season to now, because early on in the
Okay.
year, Rasmussen was giving up a ton of hard contact. I'm just thinking back to the game against the White Sox that was on Apple TV that I reluctantly watched. He gave up like, I think like four barrels in one inning, but they were all outs. So
Hmm.
he was doing that a lot early in the year. I think if we ran this for like the second half of the season, I think he'd be in the top like 80th percentile just because he's been a lot better. Um,
Okay.
he still gives up some hard contact, but he doesn't really get barreled too much. And the walk rates they've been fluctuating a bit, but they've gone down a bit as of late. So I think that would improve as well. Um, and he's just now finding more swing and miss in the zone as he's bringing in that cutter this season. So uh, his is, it's 68th percentile isn't bad. Like he's definitely
Yeah.
solid.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
he'd probably be the number two or three postseason starter, depending on what they decide to do with Glass now.
Yeah.
Mcclanahan obviously being number one, but yeah, I mean there are other things that Rasmussen does well that make him a good pitcher. So if his wEZR is low, it doesn't mean he's a bad pitcher. It just means like he's not the most effective at working within the zone.
Yeah. Yeah. And he could be guys who work the corners. I mean, I'm sure. Like who do you think is a pitcher that is a like demonstrably good pitcher, but this stat just absolutely hates?
Like on the Rays or just
Yeah, maybe if there's an example on the Rays, but I would just say if there's anyone that stood out that you're like, well, I know this guy's good, but his wEZR is like a negative, 9 or something.
um I mean it's a kind of a sample size thing, but Andrew Kittredge in his 20 innings
Okay.
this season, he was in the 10th percentile.
Yeah.
It does make sense a little bit because he is someone that works like sinker slider like off the plate, so he's not going in the zone a ton. But yeah, him being in the 10th percentile was a little surprising. Brooks Rayleigh is one who I thought would have been much higher with his 52 innings pitched. He's in the 54th percentile. So again, he's not bad at it, but
Right.
his slider is like an 80 grade slider. So you'd think that he would get a ton more swing and miss. But again, he throws it off the plate. So, it doesn't really value guys that get, you know, a high chase rate, but it does value them in some capacity because if they're getting chases but they're not walking a ton of guys, then they're still valuable. So, and then the barrel rate still plays into that. So it still values them, but I think I don't know. It's just interesting because it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not necessarily telling. It's not
Right.
an all-encompassing stat, but there are no all-encompassing stats except for maybe
Correct.
WAR, I guess.
I love it. What have I missed? What haven't I asked you about wEZR that you've come up with that you liked?
Um, I can share like a couple prospects, I guess, some
Ooh,
Rays
I love it. Yeah.
prospects
What
because
about
I do
the
have my
Rays in the
minor
future?
league stuff. So the highest relief pitcher, not in the Dominican Summer League or a complex league, in the Rays organization is Joe La Sorsa. That is not a name that anybody would know too much about, but he has been terrific across high A and double A this year. He's a relief pitcher. He's 24 years old, so he's a bit on the older side in terms of prospects, but especially for his level, like pitching in double A, but it's fine. He's still been great. He's got a 98th percentile wEZR in across all levels of the minors except for the ones I mentioned earlier. And then Javi Guerra, when he was in the minors, he had a 95th percentile wEZR, so that kind of makes sense. He's been great down there. In terms of starting pitchers and bulk guys, uh, the best Rays pitcher in that regard is, sorry, I got to filter again one more time here,
Yeah, no worries.
but I'm going to stall a little bit. So while I'm scrolling, because I have like over 3,000 players to scroll through, it surprisingly wasn't Taj Bradley, which I know he's someone that everybody loves, popular name, obviously. But the highest starting pitcher bulk guy was Nathan Wiles. He did a fantastic job of limiting walks. He had an under 4% walk rate. Evan Mckendree, another underrated guy up there in the 97th percentile. Wiles was in the 98th. Mason Montgomery, he is another Rays pitcher in the minors who took a major step forward this year. He's 22. He pitched in high A and double A this year. He had a 94th percentile wEZR, as opposed to Taj Bradley, who's 21 pitching in triple A. So there's a bit of a caveat there. He had an 88th percentile. So, yeah, it's just interesting how it values the different things that some pitchers do better than others. But I think we're going to see guys like Wiles, Mckendree, Montgomery, like they're going to have success at the major league level, and they're going to continue it through the minors, obviously, because wEZR does have a pretty strong correlation season to season, unless there's like an injury or sample size thing. Like it's pretty reliable. So, yeah, I'm going to use it to make some predictions this offseason once we get, all the data and I can, sort through all that. So I'm excited to see like who might have like a breakout next year.
Yeah, I'd like to see who you saw out of because of correlation last year. If you look at your 2021 numbers versus what they did actually this year, and I know every individual player is going to have an individual story why they didn't meet expectations or why they exceeded expectations. So that'd be cool. I'm looking forward to that. That could be a whole episode on its own. So
honestly, yeah.
Yeah, I love it, dude. This was a fun, and I think it helps with your daily notes too. It's good to see for guys in the future, and can't wait to see what tweaks you make about this. So, yeah, come on. I mean, dude, you made your own statistic. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's
cool,
it's like useful too. Like I had some fans of like other teams. They're like, "Where does this prospect rank?" And and then I'm like, "I've never heard of that guy, but he's got this wEZR." And now when I look into him, I'm like, "Oh wow, he's actually really good." So this number makes sense. So the numbers do match the eye test to an extent. So
Okay.
it's comforting, and they also match ERA and FIP, like I said too. So there's some like
Dude,
concrete stuff there.
I'm just envisioning like because again not just on the good side but on the bad side too. I can't wait to dunk on some Yankees prospect that or guy they're bringing in. They're giving $45 bajillion, and you're like, yeah, but this guy like sucks in the zone, dude. Like when Wander Franco's staring down one of his pitches, he's gonna knock it out of the trop. So I love it.
Oh yeah.
Well, but that was the meat and potatoes of the episode. But I did want to get to some of the questions that people have asked you on Twitter. I got a few comments more than anything, and I think the first one I'm sure you want to talk about is we just had a comment on your Twitter here that Josh Lowe is the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a question, a comment. That could be a concern. I don't know. I mean, I think he definitely has a role like going into next season, but I think the verdict is still out on that one.
Yeah, I'm not quite gonna agree with Julian there, but appreciate you sending the comment anyway. You did get a few credit card numbers, so that was good. I hope that you buy something very nice on Amazon.
Yeah,
but
go out to dinner
the the main question we got was about the future. Look, this is the weird time of year where we have clinched, so we still have 5 or 6 games to play before the playoffs. So I'm sure you might see some weird lineups. You're trying to get guys hot. You're trying to do your last minute experimentations before the playoffs, but people are also thinking about the future, and so we had a question here for what is your ideal catcher combo for 2023?
I mean, I really
And
want Zunino back. Oh wait,
you
sorry. I
can
forgot there was
involve
a second
catchers.
part.
No, you can involve catchers you trade if desired. That is added in here too.
Right. I mean, I really want Zanino back, but I don't know if that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he wants to return, but there's a lot of things they're going to have to work out for that. And is he going to be 100%? He's probably one of the top like 5 game callers in the league, so that's a huge thing that we can't really measure, but he's really good at it. Fantastic framing. Love the power threat too. Like if you can get 20 to 30 home runs from your 8 or 9 hole hitter, that's fantastic. So. I really want Zunino back. I've warmed up to Mejia more
Okay.
recently, looking into like his batter ball profile and how consistent his launch angles are. He's improving his exit velos. The results haven't necessarily been there yet, but I think he's going to be like a high BABIP kind of guy, and the Rays are grooming him into that kind of role. So it's going to be interesting to see that kind of unfold next year. I really like Rene Pinto. I think he might be the best defensive catcher in the organization, not named Mike Zunino. So fantastic pop times, among the top like 3 in the league. But now Bethancourt too is just
Man,
fantastic. Like he's so good.
well, I was going to ask you because Mejia and Bethancourt are both arbitration guys. Bethancourt's going into what his year 32 season, and Mejia will be age 28, I believe, next year. So with do you see Pinto getting way more time, and are they gonna just choose between Bethancourt and Mejia as like the veteran to be there as well?
I could honestly see like some kind of trade coming up because you've got 4 catchers that can play at the major league level, and you really only need like 2 and then stash 1 in the minors. So I
Yeah.
think, Pinto would be the one who gets stashed in the minors. So you're gonna have to pick one of Zanino, Mejia, and Bethancourt to leave, get traded, retire, move into a coaching role. So it's going to be interesting. It's really hard to say because sometimes the Rays just do the opposite of what we think they're going to do with those
Yeah.
sort of things. But given
Yeah.
the contract obligations and like the money and stuff, I think maybe Zanino would be the one who like gets his deal restructured or something like that. Um, yeah, it's
Yes.
really just hard to say, but I think no matter what happens, we're gonna have like one of the better catching duos in the league. Because like any combination of those 4 guys is gonna be really solid.
Awesome, man. Yeah, unfortunately, there will be an odd guy out. I would, at this time, I'd probably say Zanino is the guy that's going to be the odd man out. Just because the other guys are cost controlled a little bit more, and obviously Pinto's the future of all those 3.
Yeah,
Let's.
I just got another question.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
wanna,
bring it.
yep. So from friend of the show, Darth Steven, once again.
Let's go.
He said, "Who would you rather have the Rays play against in the postseason? The Guardians, Mariners, or Blue Jays?"
Ooh. So I want to stay the hell away from the Mariners.
Yeah,
They've got a team of destiny thing going on right now that I am not. I don't want to be the first. Maybe we're gonna have to inevitably run into them at some point, but I don't want to be in the wild card where it's only a shorter series. No, I don't want to run into that. Who's the better option though? Ooh, I mean, Guardians is weird because we just played them, and so there's kind of it's hard to beat a team so many times. They did get the better of us this week, but it's hard to beat a team, consistently. I think that, and this is something that I love that you bring up all the time, is like I think one of the reasons you're optimistic is that like in the long run the Rays win. In the long run, they've got guys in positions that they should get the dice rolls. They should get the coin flips. And so sometimes they don't in extended periods of time. But this is one reason why familiarity, I think, is a good thing. Toronto, who knows? I don't know who's going to show up with Toronto in the playoffs. They could be young and hungry. They could just fall on their face. So it'd be between the Guardians and Blue Jays. I'd probably say the Guardians.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's such a small sample, like a 3 game series, like
Yeah,
literally anything can. The Rays got swept in 3 games in Cincinnati, so it's
yeah,
like it's impossible to say. But yeah, I mean, the Guardians are definitely the most beatable team. They
yeah.
don't do anything scary offensively. They have a strong pitching staff, but it's kind of top heavy. Like Shane Bieber he's a good starter. Like he's great. But then like Tristan McKenzie, like he's good too, but like there's a pretty significant drop off in the starting pitching after Shane Bieber. Um, Kind of in the bullpen, same thing. Like they have a like everybody in their bullpen is good, but like after Class A, it's like who else? So they really don't have like a shutdown kind of guy other than him. But in a 3 game series, he's going to pitch in all 3 games most likely. But Shane Bieber won't. So it's hard to say. I think that Cleveland is probably the most beatable team, but that Blue Jays pitching staff is very shaky and it's being held together with like scotch tape right now. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to play them. The Mariners, I you're either going to win that series and be the villain for like the rest of the postseason, or you're going to lose the series because they're just on a tear. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be involved. But like if they do play them again, 3 game series, anything can happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's. I think the longer series I would go against Toronto. The shorter series I'd go against Cleveland. So,
Yeah.
thankfully, we played both of those teams this week, and it's a fantastic segue into the next little piece. Since last we talked, or since last you and Zach spoke, we did play the Toronto Blue Jays, and unfortunately split the series. But it was a pretty resounding loss. Before we get into Cleveland, what were your thoughts on the finality of the Toronto series?
Well, they had to at least split the series to win the whole season series, and they did that. So the
Yeah,
games after that, I mean, like obviously you want to get like you want to win as many games as possible, but like after they won the second game in that series, it really didn't matter as much because they had already clinched. They decided to rest
yeah,
some key guys. I think at one point they had like Randy on the bench for one of the games, and then also Yandy, and they're also missing like Brandon Lau, and then I think they might have benched Wander in one of the games too. So it was like you're just missing like I mean they're doing it intentionally, like they're not, just putting out bad lineups because they don't know what they're doing. Like they want to rest guys. It's near the end of a like 18, or it was like the end of an 18 game and 17-day stretch. So it
yeah.
is what it is. They won the season series. They did what they had to do, and they unfortunately went 500 in that series.
Then we went to Cleveland, and they were all close games. The first game was it was a 6-5 extra inning Manfred ball, followed up by a 1-run Manfred ball game in 10 innings. Then followed with another 1-run game that was came down to the very last half inning. So I mean, again, this was as close to a playoff series as you're going to get because the magic number was 1 after beating Cleveland in the first game. So they couldn't pull it off 2 straight times, but we have 3 straight games with a 1-run difference.
Yeah, I mean it was an exciting series. Like we're gonna see if the Rays end up playing Cleveland. A lot of games like that where they're tight. It's two good teams going at it, strong bullpens. So it makes sense. Unfortunately, they didn't get the lucky bounces they needed.
Yeah.
Um, Rain delays were a little wonky too. The umpiring was
Oh
very
yeah.
questionable at the end of the game on the third one.
Mm, yeah.
Um, what else? Yeah, the bounces. It's just, and then also Yandy was not playing that series, and he's been the Rays' best hitter, like the offensive MVP this season without a doubt. So when you don't have him in the lineup, it's not surprising when they're struggling. But they also have guys that are slumping right now too, or were slumping. They kind of broke out of it a little bit yesterday. Couple of guys getting unlucky, like Jimon Choi, David Peralta, Jonathan Aranda, 3 of the most unlucky hitters in baseball in the month of September. So It's October now, so hopefully that changes. But it was kind of just the perfect storm. But it is what it is. I'm not too worried about it. They really are clinched now, so it's not too bad.
And then the final game of the week was the game that was played last night as we were recording. That is the 7-3 win against Houston, where I mean, Rass came out, did a good job. I mean, pretty solid effort. Nothing too crazy, but he held the court for the most of the game. But it was the bats. I mean, it was Wander had a single, Siri had a double, Diaz had a double, Walls hit a homer, like Randy tripled. Like it was just they literally hit for the cycle in scoring runs.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really encouraging to see Harold finally like hit the ball hard. He had a couple 100-mile-an-hour exit velos after, he hadn't done that for like almost 2 weeks. So that was encouraging. And then we also saw Margot draw a walk, which was cool because he had been swinging it almost every single pitch for about 2 weeks. So he's starting to maybe turn a corner there offensively. And we got Yandy Diaz back though. That was like the main thing. He is like the spark plug for the offense at the
Yeah.
leadoff spot.
Gotta love it, man. Now, what do you foresee for this next week of baseball? We are still playing Houston twice on Saturday this weekend, and then we're finishing out with a trip to Fenway Park for 3 games against Boston. What do you think they're gonna tool around with some things, or do you think they want to get kind of their playoff lineup set and guys in position in leadoff spots in the middle of the lineup before they have to do it for real?
I think the main priority might be just keeping everybody healthy. We're already
Okay.
pretty banged up as it is. I know Jalen Beeks went on the IL again fairly recently, so we're going to want him back. They're going to continue to stretch out Glass now, so he can go maybe like 4 or 5 innings in the postseason. I don't know as a starter or what, but he'll be pitching in that first playoff series for sure at some point. So I think the main priority is to keep everybody healthy, and then maybe in that final series try to run out like your ideal playoff lineup for the first 5 innings of the last couple of games, and then do a bunch of defensive subs and stuff. I think we might get somewhat of an extended look at Miles Mastroboni because he is Rule 5 eligible, so the Rays are going to want to decide, do we keep him or expose him? Um, Either way, it's a win for him because he's going to get the chance to showcase himself. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to everybody staying healthy, really. I'm not too concerned about like jockeying for a playoff spot.
Yeah, again, the worst case scenario is you're going to play what of the 3 teams that we talked about earlier. So it's like, other than the Mariners, I think you just want to stay away from them. But guess what? If that's what happens, that's baseball. We're gonna have to figure it out. So, but I'm pretty confident. Other than some of the 1-run games, watching them were kind of gut punches. You said the word unlucky. That's a good way to describe it. Where we load the bases, can't get anyone in. Just an inch or two here and there, and we're talking about 3 straight wins instead of just getting 1 out of 3 against the Guardians. So,
Yeah.
well, what can you do? That's baseball. That's why you love it. It's why we hate it. Well, I would say the last thing I want to say is thank you for listening. You've made it this far. You're the MVP. We're going to ask you for one more thing. Wherever you're listening to this, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, there's a like button or there's a follow button. Go ahead and click that for us. It helps us because every time you do that, it not only lets it, every time we put an episode, it comes right to your inbox, but it definitely spreads the word to the algorithm, the almighty algorithm, that this is something that other people will like, and it will pop up in their little recommendations as well. So it's absolutely free to do, takes a second of your time, and helps us out immensely. The other thing, there's a link in the description to our t-shirt shop. We are at shop.rblrsports.com. If you go on there, we've got a ton of t-shirts celebrating our Rays and Rowdies and Bucks and Lightning and every team that we love here in Tampa Bay. We've got shirts celebrating that. So we actually saw, Ben, I don't know if you saw this, man. It was a really cool picture by one of friends of our show, Will, who posted him and friends or family. It was 3 different people wearing that really cool "Bring Back the Devil" shirt on Devil Rays Day.
Awesome.
I couldn't be prouder. It was really, really cool to see listeners of ours repping their favorite team, but also, repping us, man, and I love that. So in the description, again, there is a link right to the shop. You could wear one of those really cool "Bring Back the Devil" shirts, and all you got to do is put in a little promo code, and you'll save a bunch of money. So, Ben, what's the promo code they could use?
Promo code is FLAPPY. That's FLAPPY, and you can plug that in and save some money.
I was going to change the code, but I like hearing you say it every week.
All right, that works.
If you come up with a better code, we'll use that one. How about that, Ben? Ooh,
right, sounds good.
Ooh, wEZR. Ooh, we could use wEZR as a promo code.
That's true.
Well, Ben, we'll give you the last word. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation explaining all the little machinations of wEZR and what it means, what it tells, and some things to look for in the future, which is the best thing. So,
yeah, I'm excited to continue to refine it and, input some more data once we get to the end of the season. Durham plays in their championship, the International League Championship tonight, and then if they win, they play in the AAA Championship the following day. So hopefully we're playing 2 games and they're winning both of them, and then maybe Roman Quinn gets activated after that because he's in Durham right now. So lots of championship baseball.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for Ben Whitelaw. Again, I am Eureka Wheeler. You've been listening to RBLR Sports. Follow us on all social media. We are at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, we're there. So you are the MVP. Thank you so much. And for all of us here at RBLR, go Rays.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.